All right, Ian. We got a Patreon.
Patreon.com/CU podcast.
And what do you get there, Ian?
Stuff.
It's the same thing like the machine you put the quarter in, right?
It's
not random, though.
I do writings about once a week about whatever pops into my head. We put the full video podcast up there, so it's not broken up into segments for you. I do a hangout once a month. Got to figure out what day I'm doing that this month.
This Saturday or Sunday?
Huh?
This Saturday or Sunday work?
I'll figure it out. So, yeah. Anyways, check it out.
All right. In third place, this is a tighter race going on. In third place, 21%. What licensed property would you want adapted to a pinball machine? That's Ian's pet topic. Second place, 36%. The state of amiibo collecting, 5 years in. And number one at 43%. Are professional critics for games and movies still necessary? Ian, what do you think?
I think there's still a space for professional criticism when it comes to media. Reason being, people who have done it for a long time know what to look for, know what to talk about. They know what people want to know about when it comes to whether it's a movie or a game or a book or something that's come out. They know what questions people have about something. So they hone in on it. Also, I think there's something to be said about finding a critic, whether it's your local newspaper critic or something like that you tend to agree with. And it's a good way to get a relative idea of whether or not something is going to be interesting to you or for you.
Sure.
I've never let a critic, in almost any situation that I can think of, be the be-all end-all deciding factor as to whether or not I'm going to like something or enjoy something. But I do like having a place to go where I can read the reviews and opinions of people. And if it's someone that I've been reading for a long time, I guess you don't need to be professional. I could read an amateur critic for a long, long time. But after a while, if you've been doing it long enough, you tend to get viewed as a professional critic or someone who does it for a living or someone that people look to for this sort of thing. So I don't think they necessarily have a specialized sense that other people don't have. But I think after years of doing it and becoming ingrained in, I don't know, critic culture, if you want to call it that, it is nice to have those places where you can look for a quick opinion on something that you might be interested in.
A professional critic, what's interesting to me about being a professional critic is that you have to have a background in whatever the field is, supposedly. Like if I'm a film critic, I probably, I've been watching movies for a long time. That's like my bread and butter. Obviously, if you're a local paper, you probably start low. But like the critics that people know about, the famous ones, like Siskel and Ebert and Roper, and the guy does the movie review guides. These guys, some of these guys have like decades worth of watching films, and that's all they do.
Sure.
So that's not
reviewers from Michelin.
Yeah. So that's not to say that like they know better about it, but they're more likely to find or tune into things that the casual person won't. They're more likely to be like, oh, this is an interesting thing, and this is like homage to some sort of film 30 years ago, or It's inspired by this. So they pick up on the stuff that might key you in and be like, oh, that's interesting. I never thought about that. Or, oh, this might be related to a genre that died out 30 years ago, or it's using a lighting element that hasn't been seen. And those are things that the casual viewer may not know about at all. And that could interest you once you find out about it. So that's why professional critic to me still needs to exist, especially for something like music, where they know what, oh, they're basing this off this obscure band in the 70s, or this like genre that died out. Or like you said, I think you brought up like maybe food. A food critic could pick out ingredients or why it's prepared a certain way. So I still think there's room for professional criticism. Absolutely. That's not to say that what they're saying is gospel, because it's still an opinion, a subjective art form. But I'm not like it's, oh, professional critics are needed. It's like, well, no, they still count for something, and to me, and an aggregate of all the critics to me is great. Like, I love Rotten Tomatoes. To me, whenever I now see a movie that I walk out of from Rotten Tomatoes, I'm like, oh, the aggregate was pretty spot on what the consensus was. That was pretty accurate. I'm not shocked anymore when I walk out of a movie after I saw what the consensus was on Rotten Tomatoes. I'm like, oh, that's pretty much in line with like 100 critics. And it's like, oh, what is the average sort of saying? Like, that's, there's a need for that. I don't want to go to the movies and waste 3 hours of my life and $20 and be disappointed or say, oh, that was shit.
Sure.
I
also, I think, and I'm not saying that this is why this person asked the question or by any means, but I feel like this question, I feel like we might have even talked about this once briefly a few years ago. But, and I don't know what would have sparked this off. Maybe it was just, a question for a question, but I do know that this question tends to pop up more when something that was expected to be really, really good comes out and gets really bad reviews, or something really bad comes out, yet it seems to be a darling in critics' eyes. People get upset when the critic doesn't match, when the critic review or take on it doesn't reflect their take or review or take on it. And people are always like, well, we don't need professional critics. I like this. They don't. But the thing is if that professional critic were to have liked it, when arguing this with someone else, I guarantee you these people would go to the professional critic and be like, well, so-and-so liked this and they said this and this about it. It's one of those things where if someone's with you, you love it. But if they're against you, you're immediately turned off on it and you think that no one, there's no point for criticism.
Is that because what's the game you think that it's happening with? I don't. Death Stranding or something?
No, I just said that it happens when games like this. I don't know that there was any reason for this question, but I do see that when a game or a movie or something comes out.
Batman v Superman, that was one.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, they're all on Disney's payroll, all those critics. It's like, no, they're not. They just didn't like the movie.
Right, exactly, and that's what I'm saying. Had those and that's when that's a perfect.
But are you saying
example.
if it got 90% instead of 30% Rotten Tomatoes,
and it had been the other way around, and someone had liked
it,
they would have pointed to it and held it up as the bastion of truth.
And of course,
that's just how human nature is. That's just how people work.
Yeah, of course, when like Wonder Woman gets a positive aggregate score, or Aquaman, I think got pretty positive. They'd ignore that at that point.
Right.
Oh, then the critics are fine.
Exactly.
Right, they're fine then. Wonder Woman will get like 90%.
Wonder Woman did really, really well.
93%. Wow. Okay. It was a good movie. The last 15 minutes were terrible, but the movie up to that point was good for that. Okay. I also want to say this. I don't want to rub people the wrong way when I say this necessarily. There's also, because this is in general in society right now, we are seeing a sort of anti-intellectualism sort of push in some degrees, where experts in whatever the field is, whether it's legal experts, constitutional experts, climate change scientists, they're discounted like their opinion doesn't matter for whatever reason when they're the ones trained in it.
Well,
and I think that carries over to this. It's not totally related because obviously a movie's not as important as denying climate change.
I get what you're saying though. I think there's hints of
it's a little
bit
in
this. Just fucking thing that made me furious the other day. I was reading up on, it's like a month or 2 months ago, I was reading up on diets. I can't remember if it was the paleo diet or I think it was the Whole30 diet or something that I'd come across. I was reading a little bit about it, and I had read a couple other articles on it, and basically it's like, okay, you can eat nutritious food, but doctors don't really recommend this diet, et cetera, et cetera. And I was reading just some woman was writing about it, and she's like, now they say that that there's no scientific proof behind it, but I just feel like eating cleaner is better. And it's like, no, I'm
your
sorry.
Your feelings don't matter.
Yeah, your feelings don't matter here. I'm not saying that every doctor is right. There are plenty of doctors that aren't fucking fantastic, but to disregard and say you just feel like this diet is making you better is fucking suburban white horse wife bullshit. It's the fucking stupidest thing in the goddamn world to say that.
It's the reason why kids have like rubella and mumps.
Right, again. Exactly. She's probably an anti-vaxxer too. I just feel like it doesn't fucking matter what you feel like.
That's not how science works. Science is a consensus of people who are actually researching and coming to a consensus conclusion. That's what science is.
Not all doctors are great. You can't always rely on the appeal to authority, but this person went to school and studied this.
Yes.
And what did you do? You woke up and felt sunny one morning, so you decided that this diet was the way to go.
Yeah, and that's what I'm seeing more and more. And from smart people that, people I've talked to, and it's like, you bring up things that it's like, well, the most experts agree on this, or 99% of scientists say it's this. And they throw out some, like, they're smart people, so they think because they're smart, they have the ability to outthink some people that in a field they're not trained in. They can outthink someone else. The smartest person admits when they don't know enough they have to then yield to the opinion of someone who's trained in something. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert in finances or legal things or what's going on in the world in some aspects, I will then see what the experts that have studied it their whole lives, what they say, especially when it comes to science. Something that you can't look up on a YouTube video or a couple of articles to think you know better than someone that's a climatologist that studied their entire fucking lives. You know, like that to me is just the astounding arrogance of ignorance that we're seeing in this day and age across aisles of it. A lot of thought. It's arrogant ignorance masquerading as intelligence. I'll just say that. We're going off on a different tangent now, but that's what we're seeing. And it's very disconcerting. And that's why, that's why some things are out where we're at right now, unfortunately.
And that's the end of this episode of the CU podcast.